Sarah Martinez had been awake since 4 in the morning. She sat on the edge of her bed in the small motel room, staring at her violin case. The case was old and covered with stickers from different places she had visited with her family. There was one from the Grand Canyon, another from a rest stop in Texas, and a faded one from her middle school. Outside, Boston was still dark. Sarah could hear cars driving past on the wet streets. She had never been to a city this big before. Back home in New Mexico, she could see the stars at night. Here the sky was orange from all the lights. Everything felt different. Everything felt scary. She looked at the clock. It was 5:47 a.m. Her audition was not until 10 a.m., but she could not sleep anymore. She had been thinking about this day for months. Actually, she had been thinking about it for years. This was her one chance to go to a real music school. This was her chance to become something more than just a girl who played violin at family parties. Sarah got up and walked to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was messy from tossing and turning all night. She had dark circles under her eyes. She looked tired and nervous. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to smile at herself. But the smile looked fake and forced. Her mother was sleeping in the other bed. They had driven for 2 days to get here. Her mother had taken time off from her job at the grocery store. They did not have much money, so they shared one motel room and ate cheap food from gas stations. Her mother believed in her. Her mother had always believed in her. That made Sarah even more nervous. What if she failed? What if she let her mother down? Sarah went back to her bed and opened her violin case. The violin inside was not fancy. It was not old and expensive like the ones she had seen online that famous musicians played. Her grandmother had bought it for her at a pawn shop when Sarah was 7 years old. The wood was scratched in some places. One of the tuning pegs was a little loose. But Sarah loved it. This violin had been with her through everything. She took the violin out carefully and held it. She did not play it because her mother was sleeping and the walls were thin. She just held it and remembered all the times they had played together. She remembered learning her first song. She remembered playing at her cousin's wedding. She remembered the day her grandmother died, and how Sarah had played her favorite song at the funeral. Everyone had cried. Her grandmother had been the one who taught her music. Abuela Rosa had played guitar and sung traditional Mexican songs. She knew hundreds of songs by heart. She never read music from paper. She just played what she felt. She had taught Sarah to do the same thing. Music is not just notes on a page, Abuela Rosa would say. Music is feelings. Music is life. You play what is in your heart, mija. But Sarah knew that fancy music schools did not care about playing from the heart. They cared about playing the right notes at the right time. They cared about technique and training. They cared about all the things Sarah had never really learned properly. She had taught herself most things by watching videos on YouTube. She had borrowed books from the library. She had practiced alone in her room for hours and hours. But she had never had a real teacher. She had never been to a conservatory or a special music camp. She was just a girl from a small town who loved to play violin. At 7:30, her mother woke up. "Good morning, mija," she said with a sleepy smile. "Are you ready for today?" Sarah nodded, but she did not feel ready at all. Her stomach felt sick. Her hands were shaking a little. Her mother got up and hugged her. "You are going to be wonderful. I know it, your abuela knows it too. She is watching over you today." They got dressed and went to find breakfast. They walked to a small cafe down the street. Everything in Boston was expensive. A simple breakfast of eggs and toast cost more than what they would pay for a whole meal back home. But her mother did not complain. She just smiled and told Sarah to eat everything so she would have energy. Sarah tried to eat, but the food felt like rocks in her stomach. She kept thinking about the audition. She kept imagining all the ways she could mess up. What if her hands shook too much? What if she forgot the music? What if the judges laughed at her? After breakfast, they took the subway to the college. Sarah had never been on a subway before. The train was loud and crowded with people. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going except for Sarah and her mother. They had to ask for directions 3 times before they found the right stop. When they came up from underground, Sarah saw the college for the first time. The buildings were beautiful and old, made of red brick with white trim. Students walked around with instrument cases and backpacks, talking and laughing. They all looked confident. They all looked like they belonged there. Sarah did not feel like she belonged. She felt like an outsider. She felt like someone had made a mistake by letting her audition here. They found the music building and went inside. The hallway smelled like wood polish and old paper. There were pictures on the walls of famous musicians who had studied there. Sarah recognized some of the names. These were people who had won awards and played in the best orchestras in the world. How could she ever be like them? They found the waiting area for auditions. There were about 15 other people there, all around Sarah's age. They all had their instrument cases with them. Sarah noticed that their cases were much newer than hers. Some of them looked very expensive with special locks and padding. Her mother squeezed her hand. "I will wait right here," she said. "You go and show them what you can do." Sarah sat down in one of the chairs. The other students were talking to each other. She listened to their conversations and felt more nervous with every word. "I studied with Professor Chen last summer," one boy was saying. "He helped me perfect my vibrato. My teacher made me practice scales for 2 hours every single day," a girl said. "But it was worth it. My technique is so much better now." "I performed at Carnegie Hall last year," another boy said proudly. "Just a small concert, but still." Carnegie Hall. Sarah felt smaller and smaller. These students had professional teachers. They went to special music camps. They performed at famous places. What did she have? A dead grandmother who taught her folk songs, a scratched violin from a pawn shop. Videos from YouTube. A girl with red hair sat down next to Sarah. "Hi," she said with a friendly smile. "I'm Emily. This is crazy, right?" "I'm so nervous," Sarah was surprised. This girl looked confident with her nice clothes and expensive violin case. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly. "Yeah, I'm nervous too." "Where are you from?" Emily asked. "New Mexico, a small town you probably never heard of." "Where are you from?" "Connecticut. I go to a performing arts high school there." "What about you?" "Where do you study?" Sarah felt her face get hot. I don't go to a music school. Just a regular high school. I taught myself mostly." Emily's eyes got wide. "Really? Wow, that's actually really cool. I could never do that. I need my teacher to tell me everything." Sarah felt a little better. Maybe being different was not always bad. They talked for a few more minutes. Emily told her about her teacher and her school and all the competitions she had been in. Sarah mostly listened. She did not have many impressive things to talk about, but Emily was nice and did not make her feel bad about it. Then a door opened and a woman with a clipboard came out. "Emily Rodriguez?" she called. A different girl stood up and walked toward the door. She looked confident and ready. The door closed behind her. Sarah waited. She watched other students go in one by one. Some of them came out looking happy. Some came out looking sad or disappointed. Each time the door opened, Sarah's heart beat faster. She took out her violin and checked it. She tuned it carefully, listening to each string. The familiar sound made her feel a little calmer. This was her violin. This was her music. She knew how to do this. Sarah Martinez. The woman with the clipboard was looking right at her. Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. This was it. This was the moment everything depended on. She stood up, holding her violin case. Her legs felt weak. Her mother caught her eye from across the room and gave her a thumbs up and a big smile. Sarah tried to smile back. She walked toward the door. It felt like the longest walk of her life. Every step took forever. The woman with the clipboard held the door open and Sarah walked through. The room inside was not very big. It had white walls and a wooden floor. There were no decorations, no pictures, nothing to make it feel warm or friendly. In the middle of the room was a music stand with a bright light shining on it. At the far end was a long table, and behind the table sat 3 people, 3 judges. 3 people who would decide her future. Sarah walked to the music stand. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet room. She could hear herself breathing. She could hear her heart pounding in her chest. The judges were looking at papers in front of them. One was an older man with gray hair and glasses. He looked serious and a little bored. The middle one was a woman with short black hair and a kind face. The third was a younger man who was already looking at his watch. "Good morning," the older man said without looking up. "You're Sarah Martinez from New Mexico?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. Her voice sounded small and scared. "Have you brought your accompanist?" he asked. "No, sir, I'm playing alone." The man nodded and made a note on his paper. "We're going to have you play a simple piece today. Nothing too complicated. We just want to hear your basic technique and tone quality." The woman judge smiled at Sarah. "Don't be nervous, dear. Just do your best." But Sarah was nervous. She was more nervous than she had ever been in her entire life. The older man picked up some papers and walked over to her. He placed sheet music on the stand. Sarah looked at it. It was Mozart's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star variations. She knew this piece. Every violin student in the world probably knew this piece. It was simple and basic. It was the kind of thing children played at their first recitals. Sarah felt a little disappointed. She had prepared harder pieces. She had practiced complicated sonatas and concertos, but they wanted her to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. "Whenever you're ready," the older man said. He walked back to the table and sat down. Sarah opened her violin case. Her hands were shaking. She took out her violin and her bow. She tightened the bow and put some rosin on it. She was stalling, trying to calm down, but she knew she could not wait forever. She lifted the violin to her shoulder. The feeling was familiar and comforting. This was home. This was where she felt safe. She looked at the sheet music. The notes were clear and easy to read. She could play this with her eyes closed. She had played it 100 times before. She raised her bow to the strings. The room was completely silent. The 3 judges were watching her, waiting. Sarah took a breath and began to play. The first notes came out clear and pure. She played exactly what was written on the page. The melody was simple and sweet. Note after note, she followed the music precisely. Her fingers knew exactly where to go. Her bow moved smoothly across the strings. But something felt wrong. The music was correct, but it felt empty. It felt like she was just copying something instead of playing something. It felt like she was a machine, not a musician. She glanced up at the judges. The older man was looking at his papers again. The younger man checked his watch for the second time. Only the woman was really watching her, and even she looked a little distant. They were bored. Sarah could see it. She was boring them. This was not what she wanted. This was not why she had come all this way. She had not driven for 2 days and spent money her family did not have just to bore 3 judges, with a simple song that hundreds of other students could play exactly the same way. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Music is not just notes on a page. Music is feelings. Music is life. You play what is in your heart, mija. Sarah reached the end of the first section. The music said to repeat it. She could play it exactly the same way again. That would be safe. That would be following the rules. Or she could do something different. Something risky. Something that might get her rejected immediately. But at least it would be real. At least it would be her. In that split second, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of playing the repeat exactly the same way, she let her bow dance across the strings in a new way. She kept the same melody, the same basic tune, but she added something to it. A little swing rhythm she had learned from listening to jazz. A small flourish that sounded like the flamenco her grandmother used to play. The older judge looked up from his papers. Sarah's eyes closed. She stopped thinking about the judges and the audition and being scared. She just played. The melody transformed under her fingers. She wove in sounds from home. The happy chaos of mariachi bands at weddings. The sweet sadness of the songs her grandmother sang. The driving energy of the fiddle music her uncle played at his restaurant on weekends. It was still Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Anyone could recognize the tune. But now it was alive. Now it had soul. Now it was hers. The younger judge stopped looking at his watch. He was staring at her now. Sarah added more. She remembered a bluegrass festival her family had stopped at once during a road trip. She had watched a fiddler play so fast his bow was just a blur. She had learned some of those techniques by watching videos over and over. She added some of that speed and energy now. Then she slowed down again, making the melody soft and gentle like a lullaby. This was for all the times she had played alone in her room late at night when she was sad or worried. Music had always been her friend, her comfort, her way of expressing things she did not have words for. The woman judge leaned forward in her chair. Sarah built to a finish, letting the last notes ring out in the quiet room. She held the final note, letting it fade slowly into silence. Then she opened her eyes. The 3 judges were all staring at her. Nobody moved. Nobody said anything. Sarah's heart sank. She had made a terrible mistake. They had asked for a simple piece played simply, and she had turned it into something completely different. She had broken the rules. She had shown off. She had ruined everything. Her hands started to shake. She lowered her violin slowly, waiting for them to tell her to leave. The silence stretched on, It felt like hours, though it was probably only a few seconds. Finally, the older man spoke. His voice was slow and careful. That wasn't what we asked for. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I know I was supposed to just play it straight. I know I wasn't supposed to change it. I got carried away. I'm sorry. Music back home is different. My grandmother taught me that music should come from feelings, not just from notes on paper. And I forgot that this is a real audition and I should have just played it the right way, and I'm really sorry. She was talking too fast, her words tumbling over each other. She reached for her violin case, ready to pack up and leave. She had blown her only chance. Her mother had taken time off work and spent money they could not afford, and Sarah had ruined it by not following simple instructions. Wait, it was the woman judge who spoke. Her voice was firm but not angry. Sarah froze, her hand on her violin case. The three judges were looking at each other now, having a silent conversation with their eyes. The younger man was writing something down quickly. The older man was stroking his beard, his expression unreadable. Sarah stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to do. Should she sit? Should she leave? Should she apologize again? The woman judge was still looking at her with an expression Sarah could not understand. Was it anger? Disappointment? Or was it something else? The older man picked up his phone and typed something. Then he showed it to the other two judges. They all looked at the phone, then at each other, then at Sarah. Sit down, please, the woman judge said, gesturing to a chair against the wall. Sarah sat, clutching her violin in her lap. Her whole body was tense. She felt like she might cry or throw up or both. The judges were whispering to each other now. She could not hear what they were saying. The younger man was nodding. The woman was pointing at something on her papers. The older man was still stroking his beard. Sarah looked at the door. She could see it from where she sat. Behind that door was her mother, waiting to hear how it went. What would Sarah tell her? How could she explain that she had been given one simple task and had failed to do it? The whispering stopped. The woman judge picked up her phone and made a call. She stood up and walked to the corner of the room, talking quietly. Sarah could only catch a few words. Unusual, remarkable. Should see. Right away. Who was she calling? What did it mean? After what felt like forever, the woman ended her call and came back to the table. She said something to the other two judges. They both nodded. Then all three of them looked at Sarah. Sarah, the older man said, and his voice was different now. Less bored. More interested. We need to ask you some questions. Sarah's hands were sweating. She wiped them on her dress and nodded. Okay, she said quietly. The older man took off his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from his pocket. He put them back on and looked at Sarah carefully. That was not what we expected, he said. When we give students this piece, they usually play it exactly as written. Nothing more, nothing less. Can you tell us why you decided to improvise? Sarah swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. I didn't really decide. It just happened. I was playing the notes the right way at first, but then it felt empty. It felt like I was just copying something instead of playing something real. My grandmother always told me that music should have feeling in it. She said playing without feeling is like cooking without taste. And I guess I forgot where I was for a minute. The woman judge smiled a little. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. Did she teach you music? Yes, ma'am. She played guitar and sang. She knew so many songs. She never read from music sheets. She just played what she knew in her heart. When I was little, she would play and I would try to copy her on my violin. She taught me to listen to the feeling of the music, not just the notes. And she taught you to improvise? To change songs and add your own style? The younger judge asked. He was leaning forward now, looking interested. Sarah nodded. She didn't call it improvising. She just said, play it your way, mija. When we played together at family parties, she would play a song and then tell me to make it sound different. Sometimes I would make it faster or slower. Sometimes I would add new parts. She said every musician should have their own voice. The three judges looked at each other again. Sarah could not tell what they were thinking. Were they impressed or annoyed? Did they think her grandmother was wrong? The older man wrote something on his paper. Tell us about your musical training. Where do you study? Who is your current teacher? This was the question Sarah had been dreading. I don't have a teacher right now. My grandmother died 2 years ago. Since then, I've been teaching myself. I watch videos online. I borrow books from the library. I practice every day, but I don't have formal lessons. You taught yourself? The woman judge asked. She sounded surprised. Everything we just heard you learned on your own? Well, not everything. My grandmother taught me the basics when I was young, and my uncle plays fiddle at his restaurant on weekends. Sometimes he shows me things. But mostly, yeah, I learned from videos and books and just trying things out. The younger judge shook his head slowly. That's remarkable. Most students your age have been taking formal lessons for 10 years or more. They have private tutors and go to special music schools. And you're telling us you learned mainly from YouTube? Sarah felt embarrassed. I know it's not the same as real training. I know I probably have bad habits and do things wrong. My family doesn't have money for private lessons. My mom works at a grocery store and it's just the two of us. We used to have more money when my dad was around, but he left when I was 9, so I had to figure things out on my own. She looked down at her violin, feeling ashamed. These judges probably thought she was not good enough. They probably thought she had no business auditioning for a fancy school like this. But when she looked up, the woman judge was smiling warmly. Don't apologize, dear. What you've done is actually quite impressive. Teaching yourself takes discipline and creativity. Many students with expensive teachers never develop those qualities. Sarah felt a tiny bit of hope. Really? Really, the older man said. He tapped his pen on the table thoughtfully. Let me ask you something else. That piece you just played, we heard elements of jazz, flamenco, mariachi, bluegrass. How did you learn to blend different styles like that? Sarah thought about it. I guess I just listened to a lot of different music. My grandmother played traditional Mexican music. My uncle likes bluegrass and country. At school, my friend Marcus got me into jazz. I listened to classical music from the library CDs. And I watch videos of all kinds of musicians. I like to hear how different people play the same kind of instrument in different ways. And then when I play, it all kind of comes out mixed together. Can you do that with any piece? Take a classical piece and play it in different styles? The younger judge asked. I think so. I've never really thought about it. It's just what feels natural to me. The woman judge looked excited now. Would you be willing to demonstrate? Could you play something else for us, but this time change the style deliberately? Sarah's heart started beating faster again. What would you like me to play? The woman thought for a moment. Do you know Bach? Maybe a simple Bach piece? I know some Bach. I learned the Minuet in G from a library book. Perfect. Could you play it for us, but play it in the style of, let's say, jazz? Sarah stood up and lifted her violin again. She knew the Minuet in G very well. It was one of the first classical pieces she had ever learned. She had played it 100 times exactly as Bach wrote it, but now they wanted it as jazz. She closed her eyes and thought about the jazz records Marcus had shared with her. She thought about the way jazz musicians took a melody and made it swing, the way they added unexpected notes and rhythms, the way they played with time, sometimes rushing ahead and sometimes falling behind the beat. She started playing. The familiar Bach melody came out of her violin, but it was different now. She added a swing rhythm, making some notes long and lazy and others short and punchy. She threw in little runs of notes between the main melody, like a jazz musician improvising between phrases. She made the music bounce and dance instead of flowing smoothly. When she finished, all 3 judges were smiling. Now play it as a sad song, the older man said. Like a funeral song. Sarah played it again. This time she slowed it way down and made each note heavy and mournful. She added slides between notes that made the melody sound like crying. She let some notes shake with vibrato that sounded like sobbing. The happy little Bach minuet became something dark and sad. Amazing, the woman judge whispered. One more, the younger judge said. He was grinning now. Play it like rock music. Sarah had to think about this one for a second. She did not play electric violin and she did not have any effects pedals or amplifiers, but she had watched rock violinists online. She knew how they played. She attacked the strings with her bow, making the notes sharp and aggressive. She added double stops, playing 2 strings at once to make it sound bigger and louder. She used the lowest strings to create a driving rhythm underneath the melody. She made the Bach minuet sound like it belonged at a rock concert. When she finished, the younger judge actually clapped. The other 2 were nodding and smiling. Unbelievable, the older man said. Sarah, in 15 years of conducting auditions, I have heard thousands of students play. Many of them are technically excellent. They play all the right notes at all the right times. They have perfect posture and perfect intonation. But you know what? I can't remember most of them. They all blend together in my memory because they all sound the same. He paused and looked at her seriously. But what you just did, that's something else entirely. That's something I will remember. That's something special. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. Thank you, sir. The woman judge leaned forward. Sarah, I have so many questions for you. Where did you grow up? Tell me about your family. Tell me about how you learned music. So Sarah told them her story. She told them about growing up in a small town in New Mexico, where there were more horses than people. She told them about her grandmother's tiny house with the garden in the back where they would sit and play music on summer evenings. She told them about learning songs at family parties and weddings and quinceañeras. She told them about her uncle's Mexican restaurant, where local musicians would come and play on Friday and Saturday nights, and how she would sit in the corner with her violin and try to learn their songs by ear. She told them about her school, which was so small it did not even have a music program. She told them about practicing alone in her bedroom for hours every day, playing along to recordings and trying to figure out techniques from watching videos. She told them about the librarian, Mrs. Chen, who would special order classical music books and CDs for her from the bigger library in Albuquerque. She told them about her mother, who worked long hours at the grocery store but always made time to listen to Sarah play. Her mother did not know anything about music, but she always said Sarah's playing made her feel things, and that was what mattered. She told them about her grandmother's death 2 years ago and how Sarah had played at the funeral. She had played all of her grandmother's favorite songs, mixing in pieces from different styles the way her grandmother had taught her. Everyone had cried, and afterwards people had told Sarah that they could hear Abuela Rosa's spirit in her music. The judges listened to everything. They asked questions. They took notes. They seemed genuinely interested in her story. Finally, the older man sat back in his chair. Sarah, what you have is very rare. You have what we call musical intuition. Some people can be trained to have it, but most people are either born with it or they're not. You can hear music in your head and translate it through your instrument naturally. You don't have to think about it. It just flows. Many of our students have excellent technical training. Sarah's heart jumped. Why did they want her mother too? Was that good or bad? They both stood up and walked into the audition room. The 3 judges were all standing now, which seemed formal and a little scary. Mrs. Martinez, the older man said, shaking her mother's hand. Thank you for coming in. We wanted to talk to both of you about Sarah's audition. Sarah's mother looked nervous. Is everything okay? The woman judge smiled. Everything is more than okay. Mrs. Martinez, your daughter is exceptionally talented. We've been teaching and judging music for many years, and we rarely see someone with Sarah's natural abilities. Sarah felt her heart soaring. They thought she was talented. They really did. However, the older man continued, and Sarah's heart sank a little at that word. We have some concerns. Sarah's technical training is limited. She has some habits that will need to be corrected. Her knowledge of music theory is probably not at the level of most of our incoming students. There would be a lot of catching up to do. Sarah's mother squeezed her hand. Sarah is a hard worker. She practices every day. She will catch up. I know she will. We believe that too, the younger judge said, which is why we'd like to offer her admission to our program. For a second, Sarah was not sure she had heard correctly. Admission? She repeated. Yes, the woman judge said with a big smile. We want you to come study here, Sarah. We think you have incredible potential. Sarah felt dizzy with happiness. She looked at her mother, whose eyes were filling with tears. Really? Are you serious? Absolutely serious, the older man said. However, there's one more thing we need to discuss. The cost of tuition here is quite high. Do you have financial aid applications in process? Sarah's mother's face fell a little. We filled out all the forms, but we don't know if we'll qualify for enough aid. I work full-time, but I don't make very much money. The 3 judges looked at each other. Then the woman judge picked up her phone again. Would you excuse us for just one more minute? She stepped out of the room, taking her phone with her. The other 2 judges made small talk with Sarah and her mother, asking about their drive to Boston and where they were staying. But Sarah could barely focus on the conversation. Her mind was spinning. They had offered her admission. They wanted her to study here. But what if her family could not afford it? What if she had to turn it down because of money? After a few minutes, the woman judge came back. She was smiling. I just spoke with our department chair, Professor Chen. He'd like to meet Sarah. Right now? Sarah asked. Yes, if that's okay. He's on his way over. He should be here in just a few minutes. Sarah did not know what this meant, but she nodded. They all waited, the room full of an excited tension. Then there was a knock on the door. The younger judge opened it, and an elderly man walked in. He was short and thin, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He walked with a slight limp and used a cane. Professor Chen, the woman judge said respectfully. Thank you for coming so quickly. This is Sarah Martinez and her mother. Professor Chen shook both their hands. His handshake was gentle but warm. Very nice to meet you both. I've been hearing interesting things about you, Sarah. My colleagues tell me you have a very unusual talent. Thank you, sir, Sarah said quietly. I understand you learned music from your grandmother? That she taught you traditional Mexican music? Yes, sir. She played guitar and sang corridos and rancheras. She knew hundreds of songs. Professor Chen's eyes got a faraway look. My grandmother taught me music too. In China, when I was very young, she played the erhu, a traditional Chinese instrument. Like your grandmother, she never read music. She played from memory and from feeling. He smiled. Some of the most important musical lessons can't be found in textbooks. That's what my abuela always said, Sarah replied, feeling an instant connection with this kind old man. Sarah, Professor Chen said, would you play something for me? Not a classical piece. Something your grandmother taught you. Something from your heart. Sarah picked up her violin again. She thought about all the songs her grandmother had loved. She chose one of the saddest and most beautiful, La Llorona, the song about the weeping woman. It was a folk song that had been sung in Mexico for hundreds of years. She began to play, pouring all her feelings into the music. She thought about her grandmother and how much she missed her. She thought about all the times they had played together. She thought about sitting in the garden, the smell of roses and chili plants, the sound of her grandmother's voice singing along. The violin sang with longing and sadness and love. Sarah played the melody the way her grandmother had taught her, adding little ornaments and slides that gave it an authentic folk sound. She let the emotion guide her fingers, not thinking about technique or perfection, just feeling. When the last note faded away, Sarah opened her eyes. Professor Chen was wiping tears from his face. So was her mother. Even the three judges looked emotional. Beautiful, Professor Chen whispered. Absolutely beautiful. I could hear your grandmother's spirit in that music. I could hear your love for her. He turned to the other judges. We must have this girl here, whatever it takes. The woman judge nodded. We were thinking the same thing, Professor. Professor Chen turned back to Sarah and her mother. Mrs. Martinez, I want to offer Sarah a full scholarship to study here. All tuition, room and board covered. We have a few merit scholarships available for exceptional students, and I believe Sarah qualifies. Sarah's mother gasped. A full scholarship? Are you sure? I'm very sure, Professor Chen said firmly. But there's more. I would like Sarah to help me with something. I've been wanting to start a new program here focusing on improvisation and cross-cultural music. Most of our students are trained in Western classical tradition only. They learn to read music and play pieces by dead composers, but they don't learn to create, to improvise, to bring their own voice to music. I think Sarah could help teach other students how to do that. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. You want me to teach? But I'm just a student. I'm just 17. You're 17 with a gift that many professional musicians spend their whole lives trying to develop, Professor Chen said. I'm not saying you'll be teaching classes right away, but maybe you could do demonstrations, work with other students, show them your process. You could learn from them and they could learn from you. The older judge spoke up. It would be part of a pilot program. We want to broaden our curriculum to include more diverse musical traditions and styles. Sarah's background and abilities would be perfect for this. Sarah looked at her mother, who was crying now. Mia, this is more than we ever dreamed of. So you accept? The woman judge asked, smiling. Sarah felt like she was floating. Everything had changed so fast. An hour ago, she thought she had ruined her audition. Now they were offering her a full scholarship and asking her to help start a new program. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear. Yes, I accept. Thank you so much. All of you. I won't let you down. I promise I'll work hard. Professor Chen patted her shoulder. I know you will, my dear. And you'll also teach us things. That's what good teachers do. They learned from their students too. There were handshakes all around, papers to sign, information about orientation and class schedules and dorm assignments. Sarah's mother asked a million questions about everything. The judges and Professor Chen answered patiently, clearly happy about their decision. As they were getting ready to leave, Emily poked her head in the door. She had finished her audition.
Hey, Sarah.
How'd it go? Sarah grinned. Good, really good, I got in. Full scholarship. Emily's eyes got wide. What? That's amazing. Congratulations. She hugged Sarah. I got in too. Maybe we'll be classmates. That would be great, Sarah said, and she meant it. Finally, after all the paperwork and all the information and all the congratulations, Sarah and her mother left the building. They walked outside into the Boston sunshine. The city that had seemed so big and scary this morning now felt full of possibility. I can't believe it, Sarah's mother kept saying. I just can't believe it. My baby is going to study at one of the best music schools in the country, and they're paying for everything. It's a miracle. It's because of Abuela, Sarah said softly. Everything she taught me. This is her gift to me. Her mother stopped walking and turned to face Sarah. She put her hands on Sarah's shoulders and looked her in the eyes. No, mija. Your grandmother gave you the foundation, yes. But what you did in there, that was all you. You took what she taught you and made it your own. You showed those judges something they had never seen before. You did that. You should be proud. Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks, but she was smiling. I'm proud, Mama. I'm so proud. And I'm going to make you proud, too. And Abuela, I'm going to work so hard. I know you will, her mother said, hugging her tight. You always do. They walked back to the subway station, holding hands and talking about the future. Sarah was going to be a real music student. She was going to learn from professional teachers. She was going to live in a dorm and meet students from all over the world. She was going to help start a new program. 3 months later, Sarah was sitting in her dorm room surrounded by music books. It was late October and the leaves outside her window were brilliant orange and red. She had never seen fall colors like this. Back home in New Mexico, there were not many trees that changed color. Her roommate, a piano student named Jessica from California, was at a party. Sarah had been invited, but she had declined. She had too much work to do. She always had too much work to do. On her desk were 3 theory textbooks, all open to different pages. There were worksheets covered with her handwriting, full of notes and chord progressions and scales. Her laptop was open to a video about Baroque counterpoint. Her violin sat on her bed, waiting for her practice session that she had not had time for yet today. Sarah rubbed her eyes. They were tired and dry from reading. Her head hurt a little. She looked at the clock. It was already 10 p.m. and she had not finished half the homework she needed to do. The first month at the college had been exciting. Everything was new and amazing. The campus was beautiful. Her classes were interesting. She met students from all over the world. There was always something happening, concerts to attend, lectures to listen to, practice rooms to use. But by the second month, reality had set in. Sarah realized just how far behind she was compared to the other students. In music theory class, they were talking about things she had never heard of. Figured bass, voice leading, modulation to distant keys. The other students seemed to understand it all easily, nodding and taking notes. Sarah felt lost. In her technique class, the teacher had pointed out a dozen problems with how she held her bow, how she positioned her fingers, how she used her shoulder. Things her grandmother had never taught her, because her grandmother did not know Western classical technique. Sarah had to relearn basic things that other students had known since childhood. Her orchestra placement audition had not gone well. She was placed in the second orchestra, the lower level one, while students like Emily got into the top orchestra. The conductor had been kind about it. You have wonderful musicality, he said, but your sight reading needs work, and your intonation is inconsistent. Sarah had nodded and thanked him, but inside she felt ashamed. Here she was, the girl who had impressed the judges so much at her audition, and she was placed in the beginner orchestra. The worst part was the practice rooms. Sarah would go to practice and hear amazing music coming from the other rooms. Students playing Paganini caprices and Tchaikovsky concertos. Music that seemed impossibly difficult. Music she could not even imagine playing. She would go into her practice room and work on scales. Basic scales that she should have mastered years ago. Her teacher, a kind woman named Dr. Park, had been very clear. Before we can work on repertoire, we need to fix your foundation, she said. I know it's not exciting, but we need to rebuild your technique from the ground up. So Sarah practiced scales. Major scales, minor scales, chromatic scales. She practiced them slowly, focusing on her bow hold and her left-hand position. She did exercises that felt boring and pointless. While other students prepared for recitals and competitions, Sarah worked on basic technique. Sometimes she wanted to cry. Sometimes she wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. Maybe she did not belong at a fancy music school. Maybe she should have stayed in New Mexico and just played for fun. But then she would think of her mother, who was so proud of her. She would think of her grandmother, who had believed in her. She would think of Professor Chen, who had given her this chance. And she would keep working. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," Sarah called, grateful for the interruption. It was Emily, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I saw your light on and figured you could use this," she said with a smile. "You're a lifesaver," Sarah said, taking one of the cups. The coffee was hot and sweet, just how she liked it. Emily sat on Jessica's bed. "Still working? You study more than anyone I know." "I have to," Sarah said. "I'm so far behind everyone else." "You're not that far behind. I heard you playing the other day in the practice room. You sounded great." Sarah shook her head. "I was just playing around. That's easy for me. But the actual schoolwork, the theory and the technique and all of it, that's hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning." Emily looked at her seriously. "Sarah, can I tell you something? Half the students here feel like they're drowning. Everyone's just good at hiding it. But you guys all seem so confident. You all know so much." "We know different things than you," Emily said. "Yeah, I can read music really well and I know music theory. But you know what I can't do? I can't improvise to save my life. If someone asks me to play a song without sheet music, I panic. If someone asks me to play something in a different style, I have no idea what to do. But you can do all of that naturally." Sarah had not thought about it that way. "Really? You think people wish they could do what I do? Are you kidding? There's a whole group of students who are obsessed with your playing. They talk about the demonstration you did in Professor Chen's class." Sarah remembered that class. It had been her 2nd week at school. Professor Chen had asked her to demonstrate improvisation to his composition class. She had been so nervous. But once she started playing, the nervousness went away. She took a simple folk tune and played it 5 different ways: classical, jazz, rock, country, and a blend of all of them. The students had applauded when she finished. "That was fun," Sarah admitted. "That's the kind of thing that makes me feel like I belong here." "You do belong here," Emily said firmly. "The school gave you a full scholarship. Professor Chen started a whole new program because of you. You belong here just as much as anyone." They talked for a while longer. Emily told her about the party she had just left. She told Sarah about a boy she liked who played cello. She made Sarah laugh with funny stories about their music history teacher, who always fell asleep during his own lectures. After Emily left, Sarah felt better. She looked at her theory homework with fresh eyes. It was hard, yes, but she could do hard things. She had always done hard things. She worked for another hour, slowly making progress through the exercises. Then she picked up her violin and practiced scales for 30 minutes. Her bow hold was getting better. Dr. Park had said so at her last lesson. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Finally, at midnight, she got ready for bed. Tomorrow would be another long day of classes and practice and studying. But that was okay. She was here. She was learning. She was growing. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work. Sarah fell into a routine. Wake up at 6. Practice for 2 hours before breakfast. Classes all morning. Lunch in the cafeteria. More classes. More practice, homework, sleep, repeat. She made friends slowly. Emily became a close friend. There was Marcus, a jazz trumpet player who shared Sarah's love of improvisation. There was Min Jun, a Korean exchange student who played cello and who was also struggling with feeling different from everyone else. In November, Professor Chen invited Sarah to his office. His office was small and cluttered with books and papers and old instruments. Pictures covered the walls, photos of him with famous musicians and composers. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair. Would you like tea? Yes, please, Sarah said. She was always nervous around Professor Chen, even though he was kind to her. He was famous. He had composed music that was played all over the world. He had won important awards. And somehow he wanted to spend time with her. He made tea in an electric kettle and handed her a cup. How are your classes going? Sarah hesitated. They're hard, but I'm learning a lot. Dr. Park tells me you're making good progress. She says your work ethic is excellent. I'm trying my best. Professor Chen sat down at his desk and looked at her carefully. Sarah, I want to talk to you about something. I've been developing this new improvisation program, and I think we're ready to start offering classes next semester. But I need help. What kind of help? I want to create a class where students learn to improvise. Not just jazz improvisation, which we already teach, but broader improvisation, taking classical pieces and reimagining them, blending different cultural styles, finding their own musical voice. He paused. I want you to be my teaching assistant for this class. Sarah nearly dropped her tea. Me, but I'm just a first-year student. I don't know enough to teach anyone. You know exactly what they need to learn, Professor Chen said. They don't need another classical technique teacher. They have plenty of those. They need someone who understands improvisation intuitively, someone who can show them that it's okay to play with music, to experiment, to make mistakes. But what if I mess up? What if I'm not good at teaching? Professor Chen smiled. Everyone messes up when they're learning. That's how we grow. Besides, you won't be teaching alone. I'll be right there with you. You'll be assisting, demonstrating, working with students one-on-one. Think of it as learning by teaching. Sarah thought about it. It was scary, but it was also exciting. What would I have to do? Come to class twice a week. Play demonstrations when I ask. Help students who are stuck. Share your process for how you create different interpretations of music. That's all. He leaned forward. Sarah, I think you could really help these students. Many of them are technically brilliant but creatively blocked. They're afraid to make mistakes, afraid to try something new. Dr. Park helped her prepare a piece for her jury. They chose a Bach sonata movement, something that would show her technical improvement but was not too difficult. Sarah practiced it until she could play it in her sleep. The night before her jury, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if she forgot the notes? What if her intonation was bad? What if the judges were disappointed in her progress? She got up and went to the practice rooms. Even at 2 a.m, some practice rooms were occupied. Music students kept crazy hours. She found an empty room and took out her violin. She started to play her Bach piece, but it felt stiff and nervous. So she stopped and just started improvising. She played the folk songs her grandmother taught her. She played jazz melodies she had learned from Marcus. She played sad songs and happy songs and silly songs. Slowly she relaxed. This was why she loved music. Not because of grades or juries or impressing people, but because music made her feel things. Music was a language that said things words could not say. After an hour, she felt better. She played her Bach piece again, and this time it felt more natural. She went back to her room and finally fell asleep. The jury went better than expected. Sarah was nervous, but she played well. The Bach came out clean and musical. The judges asked her to play some scales, which she did. Then they asked her to sight-read a piece she had never seen before, which was harder. She stumbled through it, making some mistakes, but she finished. Afterwards, the judges gave her feedback. They praised her improvement in technique. They noted that her intonation was much better. They said she had wonderful musical sensitivity. But they also pointed out areas that still needed work. Her sight reading, her knowledge of different bow strokes, her ability to play in higher positions. Overall, the head judge said, "You've made impressive progress in 1 semester. Keep working hard and you'll continue to improve." Sarah left the jury room feeling proud. She had worked so hard this semester. She had struggled and doubted herself and wanted to quit. But she had not quit. She had kept going. And she was better now than she had been in September. Her mother came to visit for Christmas break. Sarah showed her around campus. They went to a concert by the top orchestra. They ate at fancy restaurants that Sarah could not normally afford. They walked through the snowy streets of Boston, looking at holiday decorations. "I'm so proud of you, Mija," her mother said, hugging her. "I know it's been hard. I know you've been stressed. But look at what you've accomplished. I couldn't have done it without you, Mama, and without Abuela. Your grandmother would be so happy to see you here. This is what she wanted for you. To follow your music wherever it leads." On the last night before they drove back to New Mexico for winter break, Sarah gave a small, informal concert for her friends. She played in one of the practice rooms and about 20 people crowded in to listen. She played some classical pieces she had learned. She played some folk songs. She played some jazz. And then she took requests and improvised. Someone asked her to play Happy Birthday like a funeral march. She did, making it slow and sad and dramatic. Everyone laughed. Someone else asked her to play it like a Latin dance. She turned it into a salsa that made people want to move. Request after request, she transformed familiar melodies into something new. When she finished, everyone applauded. Emily hugged her. Marcus gave her a high five. Minjun said something in Korean that Sarah did not understand, but he was smiling, so she knew it was good. "This is what you're meant to do," Emily said. "Not just play violin, but create music. Make new things. That's your gift." That night, lying in bed, Sarah thought about the semester. It had been the hardest 4 months of her life. She had cried more than she wanted to admit. She had doubted herself constantly. She had felt like giving up at least a dozen times, but she had not given up. She had learned so much, not just about music theory and technique, but about herself. She learned that she was stronger than she thought. She learned that asking for help was not weakness. She learned that everyone struggles, even people who seem confident. And most importantly, she learned that her way of making music was valuable. She did not have to be exactly like everyone else. Her unusual background, her self-taught style, her mix of different musical traditions, these were not weaknesses. They were her unique voice. Winter break at home was wonderful and strange. Everything in her small town seemed smaller than she remembered. The sky seemed bigger. The quiet seemed quieter. She saw her old friends and they asked about college. She played violin at her uncle's restaurant and people requested their favorite songs. But she also felt different. She noticed things about her town she had never noticed before. How there was no diversity. How everyone knew everyone else's business. How limited the opportunities were. She loved her home, but she also knew she had outgrown it. Her mother noticed the change. "You're different now," she said one night as they washed dishes together. "More confident. More sure of yourself." "I don't feel confident," Sarah admitted. "I still feel like I'm faking it most of the time. That's what confidence is, Mija. Doing things even when you're scared. You're doing that every day." When Sarah returned to school in January, she felt ready for the new semester. She had had time to rest and recharge. She had remembered why she loved music. She was ready to keep learning and growing. The new improvisation class started in the second week of January. Sarah was so nervous she felt sick. 20 students had signed up for the class. Sarah recognized some of them. They were all older than her, second and third and fourth year students. What could she possibly teach them? Professor Chen started the class by talking about the importance of improvisation in music history. He explained that before about 1800, all musicians were expected to improvise. They did not just play music exactly as written. They added their own ornaments and variations and interpretations. But somewhere along the way, Professor Chen said, classical music became about perfection and precision. We started to think that the composer's written notes were sacred and should not be changed. This has given us wonderful performances, yes, but it has also made many musicians afraid to be creative. He gestured to Sarah. My teaching assistant, Sarah Martinez, comes from a different tradition. In folk music and traditional music around the world, improvisation is natural, expected, required. Sarah is going to show you what that looks like. Sarah stood up, her violin in hand. Her heart was pounding. All 20 students were looking at her. Hi, she said. Her voice sounded small and shaky. I'm Sarah. I'm a first-year student, so I know it's weird that I'm helping teach this class. But Professor Chen thought I could maybe show you some things about improvisation. She took a breath. I'm going to play a simple melody, just a folk song, and then I'm going to show you different ways to play it. She played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the same piece she had played at her audition. First, she played it simply and straight, like a child would play it. Then she started changing it, showing all the different styles she could think of. Classical, jazz, rock, country, flamenco, mariachi, bluegrass, blues. The students watched, amazed. When she finished, they applauded. How did you do that? One student asked. How did you know what to change? Sarah thought about it. I guess I just think about the feeling of each style. Jazz feels like this. She played a short jazzy phrase. Rock feels like this. She played something heavy and aggressive. Country feels like this. She played something twangy and upbeat. Once you understand the feeling, you can apply it to any melody. But how do you learn the feeling? Another student asked. Listen, Sarah said simply. Listen to lots of different music, not just classical music. Listen to everything. Jazz, rock, pop, folk music from different countries, traditional music, modern music. The more you listen, the more you understand. Professor Chen smiled. Excellent advice. Let's try an exercise. Everyone take out your instruments. We're all going to play a simple scale together. C major scale, up and down. But I want you to play it with different feelings. First, play it sadly. The room filled with sound as 20 musicians played a C major scale slowly and mournfully. Sarah joined in with her violin.
Now play it happily,
Professor Chen called out. The scale became bouncy and bright. Now play it angrily. The scale became sharp and aggressive. They played the scale dozens of ways. Mysteriously, playfully, sleepily, excitedly, nervously, confidently. Each time, the same notes created a completely different mood. This is improvisation, Professor Chen said. It's not just about changing notes. It's about changing feeling. It's about finding different ways to express the same idea. The class continued with more exercises. Students took turns playing short phrases and having the class echo them back in different styles. Sarah helped individual students who were struggling. She found that teaching was actually helping her understand music better too. One student, a violinist named David, was having trouble loosening up. He played everything perfectly but stiffly. I'm afraid of making mistakes, he admitted. Mistakes are part of improvisation, Sarah said. Sometimes my best ideas come from mistakes. I'll be playing something one way and my finger slips and hits a wrong note. Spring semester brought new challenges and opportunities. Sarah's schedule was packed with classes, private lessons, orchestra rehearsals, and assisting with Professor Chen's improvisation class. She was busier than ever, but she was also happier. She was starting to feel like she truly belonged at the school. In March, Professor Chen called her into his office again. Sarah, I have something exciting to tell you. The school is hosting a showcase in May. Students from different programs will perform. I want you to be one of the performers. Sarah's heart jumped. A showcase meant performing in front of the whole school. What would I play? That's up to you. But I was thinking you could do something unique. Something that shows your special abilities. Maybe take a classical piece and reimagine it, or create a medley that blends different styles. Sarah thought about it. Could I do something with the music my grandmother taught me? Professor Chen's face lit up. Absolutely. That would be perfect. Why don't you start working on it and we can meet regularly to discuss your progress? Over the next few weeks, Sarah worked on her showcase piece. She decided to create a medley of 3 songs, a traditional Mexican folk song her grandmother loved, a Bach piece she had learned that semester, and a modern pop song that was currently popular. She would weave them together, showing how different types of music could connect and flow into each other. It was challenging work. She had to figure out how to transition smoothly between very different styles. She had to arrange the pieces so they made sense together. She had to practice until the transitions felt natural instead of forced. Dr. Park helped her with the technical aspects. Your bow control has improved so much, she said during a lesson. Remember when you first came here? You could barely play a smooth bow stroke. Now look at you, Sarah smiled. It was true. She had worked so hard on her technique and it was finally paying off. She could play things now that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Emily helped her practice for the showcase by being her audience. Sarah would play her piece and Emily would give feedback. That transition was a little rough, Emily would say. Or that part gave me goosebumps. Marcus, the trumpet player, helped with the jazz sections. Try swinging the rhythm more, he suggested. Jazz is all about the space between the notes, not just the notes themselves. Minjun helped with the emotional interpretation. When you play the sad part, I want to feel like crying, he said. Don't hold back. Let the emotion out. As Sarah worked on her piece, something interesting happened. She started to hear music differently. She would listen to songs on the radio and automatically think about how she could play them on violin. She would hear classical pieces in orchestra and imagine them in different styles. Her brain was making connections between different types of music constantly. One night in April, Sarah was practicing late in a practice room when someone knocked on the door. She opened it to find a girl she did not know very well. Her name was Alicia and she played flute. I'm sorry to bother you, Alicia said nervously, but I heard you playing and I had to ask. Could you teach me how to improvise? I'm taking Professor Chen's class, but I'm really struggling. Every time I try to improvise, my mind goes blank. Sarah invited her in. I'm not sure I'm a good teacher, she said, but I can try to help. They spent an hour together. Sarah showed Alicia some of the exercises she had learned. They played simple melodies and changed them together. Sarah explained how she thought about music as a conversation, with each note responding to the previous one. Don't think so much, Sarah said. That's the problem. When you improvise, you can't think. You have to feel. Your brain is too slow, but your musical instincts are fast. Trust them. Alicia tried again, and this time she played something that was actually interesting. I did it, she said excitedly. That actually sounded like music. See, you can do it. You just needed to get out of your own way. After that night, other students started coming to Sarah for help with improvisation. She became known as the person to go to if you wanted to learn how to play more freely. She was surprised by how many students struggled with something that came so naturally to her. One evening, Sarah was in the library studying music theory when she overheard two students talking at the next table. They did not know she could hear them. Did you hear Sarah Martinez play an orchestra yesterday? One said. She's in second orchestra, but she's better than half the people in first orchestra. I know, right? I heard she's doing a solo performance at the showcase. It's supposed to be amazing. I don't get why she's not in first orchestra. She has something special. Like the music feels alive when she plays. Sarah felt herself blushing. She had spent so much time feeling inadequate and behind everyone else. She had not realized that other students respected her playing. The weeks flew by. Before Sarah knew it, it was the first week of May and the showcase was only days away. She practiced her piece obsessively. She knew every note by heart. But she also knew that the best part of her performance would be the improvised sections where she let herself play freely. The night before the showcase, Sarah called her mother. I'm so nervous, Mama. What if I mess up? You won't mess up, her mother said confidently. And even if you do, it will be okay. You're playing for people who love music. They'll understand. Just remember why you play. Not to be perfect, but to share something beautiful. I wish you could be here, me too, Mija. But I'll be there in spirit. And your grandmother will be there too. She's always with you when you play. Sarah went to bed early but could not sleep. She kept running through her piece in her head. Finally, at around midnight, she gave up on sleeping and went to a practice room. She played through her piece several times. Then she just played for herself, improvising freely. She played all the emotions she was feeling: nervousness, excitement, hope, fear. She played until she felt calm and centered. The showcase was held in the school's concert hall, a beautiful room with excellent acoustics. Sarah had performed there a few times with her orchestra, but never as a soloist. The seats filled up with students, teachers, and visitors. Emily saved Sarah a seat in the back where she could wait until it was her turn to perform. There were 8 performers total. A pianist played a Chopin piece beautifully. A singer performed an aria from an opera. A string quartet played contemporary classical music. Each performance was excellent. Sarah felt her nervousness growing. These were such talented musicians. How could she compete with them? You're going to be great, Emily whispered, squeezing her hand. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. Her name was called. She stood up, her legs feeling shaky, and walked to the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience. Her violin felt heavier than usual. She walked to the center of the stage and bowed. The audience applauded politely. She lifted her violin to her shoulder and took a breath. Then she began to play. She started with the folk song her grandmother had taught her. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. She played it the way her grandmother had sung it, with all the ornaments and slides and emotional weight. She thought about her grandmother's voice, the way it would break with feeling on certain words. She tried to capture that with her violin. The hall was completely silent except for her music. Sarah's nervousness began to fade. This was why she played, not to impress people or get good grades, but to share something true and beautiful. As the folk song faded, she transitioned smoothly into the Bach piece. She played it classically at first, showing the beautiful architecture of Bach's composition. But then she started to weave in elements of the folk song. The two melodies danced together, one old and Mexican, one old and German, meeting across centuries and cultures. She could feel the audience leaning forward. This was something they had never heard before. Bach played with the soul of a Mexican folk song. Then she shifted again, this time into the pop song. It was a current hit that everyone knew, but Sarah played it like a violin concerto. She added classical flourishes and jazz harmonies. She made it soar and sing. The familiar melody became something new and exciting. The three pieces flowed together like a river, each one distinct but connected. Sarah improvised bridges between them, creating new melodies on the spot that tied everything together. She was not just playing notes anymore. She was telling a story, the story of her journey, where she came from, what she had learned, where she was going. She built to a final climax, bringing all three melodies together at once in a swirling cascade of sound. Then she slowed down, letting everything settle into a gentle, peaceful ending. The last note hung in the air, soft and pure. Silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Sarah lowered her violin, suddenly terrified. Had she done something wrong? Had she confused everyone? Had she failed? Then the applause started. It was not polite applause like before. It was loud and enthusiastic. People were standing up. The whole audience was on their feet, clapping and cheering. Sarah stood there in shock. She had not expected this. She bowed, her face burning hot. The applause continued. She bowed again. Professor Chen was in the front row, clapping with tears on his face. Dr. Park was standing and smiling proudly. Even the older teachers who Sarah had been intimidated by were applauding warmly. Finally, the applause died down, and Sarah left the stage on shaky legs. As soon as she was backstage, "That was a remarkable performance," Dr. Wright said. "Truly remarkable. You have a very special gift. Professor Chen has told me about your background and your work in his improvisation program. I think you're doing something important here." "Thank you," Sarah said, not knowing what else to say. "I wanted you to know that we're very glad you're here," Dr. Wright continued. "When you first auditioned, there was some debate about whether to admit you. Some people felt your technical background was too weak, but Professor Chen and the others who heard you insisted that we take a chance on you. I'm glad we did." Sarah felt emotional hearing this. "I've worked really hard this year. I know I still have a lot to learn." "We all have a lot to learn," Dr. Wright said with a kind smile. "That's why we're here. Keep doing what you're doing, Miss Martinez. The world needs musicians who can bridge different traditions and create something new." After the reception, Sarah walked back to her dorm with Emily and Marcus and Minjun. They were all talking excitedly about the showcase, replaying the best moments, laughing and celebrating. "You're going to be famous," Marcus said. "I'm calling it now."
In 10 years, people will pay lots of money to hear you play. "I don't want to be famous," Sarah said, laughing.
"I just want to play music." "Well, you're going to do both," Emily said confidently. That night, Sarah video called her mother to tell her about the showcase. Her mother cried happy tears. "I knew you would be wonderful. Your grandmother knew it too. She always said you had a special light inside you. I wish you both could have been there." "We were there, mija. In your music. When you played that folk song, I could hear your grandmother's voice. You carry her with you everywhere." After they hung up, Sarah lay in bed thinking about the past year. She had come to this school feeling like an outsider, like she did not belong. She had struggled with self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy. She had wanted to quit more times than she could count. But she had not quit. She had kept working, and slowly things had changed. Not all at once, but little by little. Her technique improved. Her sight reading got better. Her confidence grew, and most importantly, she learned that being different was not a weakness. It was her strength. The next few weeks of the semester were busy with final exams and end-of-year concerts. Sarah did well on her theory final, much better than she expected. Her jury performance was strong. The judges told her she had improved more in 1 year than most students improve in 2. Her orchestra had a final concert where they played a program of romantic-era music. Sarah had several small solo lines, and she played them with confidence. Afterwards, the conductor pulled her aside. "I'm moving you to first orchestra next year," he said. "You've earned it." Sarah felt a surge of pride. First orchestra, the top ensemble. A year ago, she could not have imagined it. In the last week of school, Professor Chen asked Sarah to have lunch with him. They went to a small Chinese restaurant off campus. Over noodles and tea, he told her his plans for the improvisation program. "I've received approval to expand the program next year," he said. "We'll have 3 classes instead of 1, and I want you to take on more responsibility, not just assisting, but actually teaching some of the smaller group sessions." "Really? You trust me to do that? Sarah, you're a natural teacher. And more importantly, you understand improvisation in a way that can't be taught from a textbook. The students connect with you. They trust you. That's valuable. I still feel like I'm making it up as I go along. Professor Chen laughed. That's exactly what improvisation is. Making it up as you go along. The students need to see that it's okay not to have all the answers. They need to see someone being creative and vulnerable and authentic. You show them that. They talked about his vision for the program. He wanted to bring in guest artists from different musical traditions. He wanted to create partnerships with music programs in other countries. He wanted to change how classical musicians thought about creativity and expression. You're part of something important, he said. You're helping to change classical music education. That's not a small thing. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, but she also felt excited. This was bigger than just her. This was about helping other musicians find their voices the way she had found hers. On the last day of school, Sarah packed up her dorm room. Jessica, her roommate, was sad to see her go. Promise you'll email me over the summer, Jessica said. I promise, and promise you'll keep playing. Don't take a break. The world needs your music. Sarah hugged her. Thank you. For everything. For being patient with me when I was stressed. For bringing me snacks when I was studying too much. For being a good friend. Emily helped Sarah carry her things down to her mother's car. Sarah's mother had driven all the way from New Mexico to pick her up. She was so excited to see what Sarah's life at school was like. Sarah showed her mother around campus. They visited the concert hall where Sarah had performed. They saw the practice rooms where Sarah had spent countless hours. They met some of Sarah's friends. Her mother hugged each one and thanked them for being good to her daughter. As they drove away from the school, Sarah looked back at the buildings getting smaller in the distance. A year ago, she had arrived here scared and uncertain. Now she was leaving confident and full of hope. How does it feel? Her mother asked. It feels like the end of something, Sarah said. But also like the beginning. The beginning of what? Sarah thought about it. The beginning of figuring out who I am as a musician. I spent this year learning so much technique and theory, but I also learned that my way of making music matters, that my voice matters, that I don't have to be like everyone else. Her mother smiled. Your grandmother knew that all along. That's why she taught you the way she did. She wanted you to have your own voice, not just copy someone else's. The summer at home was different from the previous summer. Sarah practiced every day, but now she had specific goals. She was working on pieces for next year. She was developing ideas for the improvisation classes she would help teach. She was listening to music from all over the world, expanding her understanding of different traditions. She also played at her uncle's restaurant every Friday night. But now people came specifically to hear her. Word had spread that she was studying at a famous music school. The restaurant was packed on the nights she played. Sarah played everything: classical pieces, folk songs, pop music, jazz standards. She took requests and improvised. She played sad songs for people going through hard times and happy songs for people celebrating. She played lullabies for crying babies and dance music for young couples. One night, an elderly man came up to her after she finished playing. He had tears in his eyes. Thank you, he said. You played my wife's favorite song. She passed away last month. Hearing you play it, I felt like she was here with me again. Sarah felt tears in her own eyes. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm glad the music helped. This was why she played. Not for applause or grades or recognition, but to connect with people, to help them feel things, to give them comfort or joy or hope. In August, Sarah received a letter from the school. It was her official teaching assistant contract for the fall semester. She would receive a small salary for helping with the improvisation classes. It was not much money, but it meant something important. She was not just a student anymore. She was also a teacher. She had something valuable to share. She also received her class schedule for the fall. She would be taking more advanced music theory, continuing her private lessons with Dr. Park, playing in first orchestra, and assisting with 3 improvisation classes. It would be a lot of work, but she was ready for it. The night before she left to go back to school, Sarah sat in her grandmother's garden. The garden was still there, though her grandmother had been gone for almost 3 years now. Sarah's mother kept it up, growing chili peppers and tomatoes and roses just like Abuela Rosa had. Sarah brought her violin and played in the twilight. She played her grandmother's favorite songs. She played and talked to her grandmother, telling her about everything that had happened, about her successes and her struggles, about her fears and her dreams. "I miss you, Abuela," she said out loud. "I wish you could see what's happening. I wish you could know that your teaching mattered, that it changed my life." The garden was quiet except for the sound of crickets and a distant dog barking, but Sarah felt her grandmother's presence, in the flowers that still bloomed, in the music that still played, in the lessons that still guided her. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for teaching me that music comes from the heart. Thank you for giving me permission to play my own way. Thank you for believing in me before anyone else did." The next morning, Sarah and her mother loaded up the car and started the long drive back to Boston. Sarah was excited and nervous about the year ahead. She would be a sophomore now. She would have more responsibility, more expectations, more opportunities. But she was ready. She had found her voice. She had found her place. She knew who she was and what she had to offer. As they drove through the desert sunrise, Sarah thought about something Professor Chen had told her. Music education is not about making everyone the same. It's about helping each person discover what makes them unique. Sarah's second year at the music school started with a confidence she had not felt before. She moved into a new dorm room with Emily as her roommate this time. They decorated the space with posters of their favorite musicians and string lights that made everything feel cozy. On the first day of classes, Sarah walked into the improvisation classroom as a teacher, not just a student. Well, an assistant teacher, but still. 20 new students sat in chairs looking nervous and excited. Professor Chen stood at the front, and when he saw Sarah, he smiled warmly. "Everyone, this is Sarah Martinez. She's going to be working with me this semester. Sarah is a sophomore, but don't let that fool you. She has insights about improvisation that many professional musicians never develop." Sarah felt her face get hot. She gave a small wave to the class. "Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to working with all of you." The first few classes went well. Sarah demonstrated techniques and worked with students one-on-one. She found that teaching helped her understand music even better. When she had to explain something to someone else, she had to think about it more deeply. There was one student in the class who particularly caught Sarah's attention. His name was James, and he was a senior who played French horn. He seemed frustrated during every class. He would try the exercises, but nothing seemed to work for him. After the third class, Sarah approached him. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" James looked embarrassed. "I know, I'm terrible at this. I don't know why I signed up for this class. I can't improvise to save my life." "Why do you think that is?" Sarah asked gently. "I don't know. Every time I try to play without music in front of me, my mind just goes blank. I can play the hardest pieces if they're written down. But improvisation? It's like trying to speak a language I don't know." Sarah understood. "Can I tell you something? When I first came here last year, I felt the same way about music theory. Everyone else seemed to understand it naturally, but for me it was like a foreign language. I had to work twice as hard as everyone else just to keep up." "But you're so good at music," James said, confused. "I'm good at some parts of music. I struggled with other parts. We all have different strengths and different challenges." Sarah thought for a moment. "What kind of music do you love? Not what you play in orchestra, but what do you listen to for fun?" James smiled a little. "I really like old soul music. Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, that kind of thing." "Okay, perfect. Next class, bring recordings of some of your favorite soul songs. We'll use those to help you learn improvisation. You'll learn better if we start with music you actually love." The next week, James brought his phone with a playlist. Sarah listened to a few songs with him. Then she asked him to try humming along, adding his own little variations to the melodies. At first, he was stiff and self-conscious, but slowly he relaxed. He started to play around with the rhythms and phrases. "Now try that on your horn," Sarah said. James picked up his French horn and tried to recreate what he had been humming. It was rough at first, but there were moments of real musicality, moments where his personality came through. "That's it," Sarah said excitedly. "That's improvisation. You're doing it." James looked surprised and pleased. "I am, aren't I?" Over the next few weeks, James improved dramatically. He started to trust himself more. He stopped overthinking and started feeling the music. By mid-semester, he was one of the best improvisers in the class. Professor Chen pulled Sarah aside one day. "Whatever you did with James, it worked. He's a completely different player now. More free, more expressive. You have a real gift for teaching." Sarah felt proud but also humble. I just tried to meet him where he was. He didn't need someone to tell him the rules. He needed someone to give him permission to break the rules. Exactly, Professor Chen said, nodding. That's what good teaching is. In October, something exciting happened. A famous violinist named Rachel Kim was coming to give a master class at the school. She was known for blending classical music with contemporary styles. She had played with orchestras around the world and had released albums that mixed different musical genres. Dr. Park encouraged Sarah to sign up to play for Rachel Kim. This is a great opportunity. She could give you valuable feedback. Sarah was nervous but excited. She prepared a piece that showed her improvisational skills, a classical violin concerto that she had arranged to include jazz and folk elements. The master class was held in the concert hall. About 50 students came to watch. 6 students would play for Rachel Kim and Sarah was the 4th one. The first 3 students were excellent. They played difficult pieces with impressive technique. Rachel Kim gave them thoughtful feedback about their interpretation and stage presence. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked onto the stage, her heart pounding. Rachel Kim sat in the front row, smiling encouragingly. "What are you going to play for us today?" Rachel Kim asked. "I'm going to play the first movement of the Bruch Violin Concerto, but I've made some changes to it. I've added improvised sections and blended in elements from other musical styles." Rachel Kim raised her eyebrows, interested. "That sounds intriguing. Please go ahead." Sarah began to play. The Bruch Concerto was a beautiful romantic piece full of soaring melodies and emotional depth. Sarah played it faithfully at first, showing respect for the original composition. But then, in the places where the orchestra would normally play, Sarah improvised. She added jazz-influenced runs and Latin rhythms. She brought in hints of the folk music her grandmother had taught her. It was risky. She was changing a beloved classical piece. Some people might think it was disrespectful to the composer, but Sarah played with such conviction and musicality that it worked. The different elements blended together naturally. It sounded like the Bruch Concerto, but also like something entirely new. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Rachel Kim stood up, smiling broadly. "That was extraordinary. Come here, let's talk." Sarah walked down from the stage. Rachel Kim looked at her with genuine warmth. "What you just did takes courage. You took a traditional piece and made it your own without losing the essence of the original. That's not easy to do. Many musicians who try to blend styles end up with a mess, but your interpretation felt cohesive and authentic." "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice shaking a little from emotion. "Tell me about your background. How did you develop this style?" Sarah told her story, about her grandmother and her small town and teaching herself. Rachel Kim listened intently, nodding. "I understand," Rachel Kim said. "I grew up in Korea learning traditional Korean music. When I came to America to study classical violin, some people told me to forget my background, to focus only on the Western classical tradition. But I realized that my Korean musical heritage was a gift, not a burden. It gave me a unique voice." "That's exactly how I feel," Sarah said. "I used to think my background was a disadvantage because I didn't have formal training. But now I see it as my strength." "Hold on to that perspective," Rachel Kim said. "The music world needs people who can bridge different traditions. We have plenty of technically perfect musicians. What we need are musicians with authentic voices who aren't afraid to innovate." After the masterclass, Rachel Kim asked if she could speak with Sarah privately. They went to a small practice room and sat down. "Sarah, I'm very impressed with you. How would you feel about performing with me?" Sarah's eyes widened. "What, perform with you? Like in a concert?" "Yes, I'm doing a concert in Boston in December, and I like to feature young musicians who are doing interesting work. I was thinking we could perform a duet together. Maybe take a classical piece and both of us could improvise around it. What do you think?" Sarah could barely breathe. This was Rachel Kim, a famous musician, inviting her to perform together. "I would be honored. Absolutely. Yes." They talked about logistics and chose a piece to work on. Rachel Kim gave Sarah her personal email and phone number. "We'll rehearse together closer to the concert date. But start thinking about how you want to interpret the piece. Don't hold back. I want to see your creativity." After Rachel Kim left, Sarah just sat in the practice room trying to process what had happened. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Mama, you won't believe what just happened," she said, and told her everything. Her mother was crying happy tears by the end. "I'm so proud of you, Mija. You're making your dreams come true." I'm making Abuela's dreams come true too, Sarah said. She always wanted me to share my music with the world. The next 2 months were intense. Sarah balanced her regular classes, her teaching responsibilities, orchestra rehearsals, and preparation for the concert with Rachel Kim. She barely slept. She practiced until her fingers hurt. But she had never been happier. She worked with Professor Chen to develop her interpretation of the piece she would perform with Rachel Kim. It was a Bach double violin concerto, a piece written for 2 violins that had beautiful interweaving melodies. The challenge, Professor Chen said, is to improvise while still maintaining the conversation between the 2 violins. You and Rachel need to listen to each other very carefully. Improvisation with another person is different from improvising alone. Sarah practiced with Emily sometimes, with Emily playing the second violin part. You need to be more bold, Emily told her. This is your chance to shine. Don't play it safe. The night before the concert, Professor Chen invited Sarah to his office. He made her tea and they talked. Not about music, but about life, about his journey as a musician, about his fears and doubts, about the times he had failed and the times he had succeeded. I'm going to tell you a secret, Professor Chen said. Every single performer, no matter how famous or accomplished, gets nervous before big concerts. The nervousness never goes away. You just learn to use it as energy instead of letting it paralyze you. How do you do that? You remember why you're performing, not to prove yourself to anyone, not to be perfect, but to share music, to connect with people, to give them an experience they'll remember. When you focus on giving instead of on yourself, the nervousness becomes less overwhelming. Sarah thought about his words. He was right. She was not performing to show off or to prove she belonged. She was performing because she loved music and wanted to share that love with others. The day of the concert arrived. Sarah's mother drove up from New Mexico. Emily, Marcus, Minjun, and several other friends from school were coming. Dr. Park and Professor Chen would be there. Even the dean, Dr. Wright, said she would attend. Sarah spent the morning practicing lightly and doing breathing exercises to stay calm. In the afternoon, she went to Symphony Hall for a sound check and rehearsal with Rachel Kim. The hall was enormous and beautiful, with red velvet seats and ornate gold decorations. The acoustics were perfect. Even the smallest sound carried clearly through the space. How are you feeling? Rachel Kim asked. Nervous, Sarah admitted, but also excited. This is the biggest thing I've ever done. You're going to be wonderful. Just remember what we practiced. Listen to each other. Be present. Trust yourself. They ran through the piece once. It sounded good. Sarah's fingers knew what to do. Her improvised sections felt natural and spontaneous. That evening, Sarah got dressed in her dressing room backstage. Her hands were shaking as she put on her makeup and fixed her hair. She could hear people arriving in the hall, voices and footsteps echoing. There was a knock on her door. It was her mother. Can I come in? Of course, Mama. Her mother hugged her tight. You look so beautiful. So grown up. I can't believe my little girl is performing at Symphony Hall. I'm so glad you're here. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Your grandmother is here too, in spirit. She's so proud of you, Mija. They talked for a few minutes until it was almost time for the concert to start. Her mother gave her one last hug. Go make beautiful music. That's all you need to do. Sarah went to the stage door and waited. She could hear the audience settling in their seats. She peeked through the curtain and saw the hall was nearly full. Hundreds of people, maybe over 1,000, all here to listen to music. Rachel Kim came and stood next to her. Ready? Ready, Sarah said, and she meant it. The lights dimmed. The audience quieted. The stage manager gave them the signal. Together, Sarah and Rachel Kim walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. Sarah bowed, her heart racing. She could see her mother in the third row crying already. She could see her friends scattered throughout the audience, all smiling and clapping. They took their positions. Rachel Kim nodded at Sarah. They both lifted their violins. And they began to play. The Bach double concerto started gently, the 2 violins introducing their themes. Sarah and Rachel played the opening exactly as Bach wrote it, showing respect for the composition. Their violins blended perfectly, 2 voices speaking as one. Then they reached the first improvised section. Rachel Kim took the lead, playing a variation on the theme with jazz influences. Sarah listened carefully, then responded with her own variation, bringing in folk elements. Their violins conversed, asking questions and giving answers. challenging and supporting each other. Sarah forgot about the audience. She forgot about her nervousness. She was completely absorbed in the music, in the dialogue happening between her violin and Rachel's. This was improvisation at its best, two musicians listening deeply to each other and creating something neither could create alone. They moved through the piece, sometimes playing in perfect unison, sometimes diverging into contrasting ideas that somehow fit together. Sarah took risks, trying things she had never tried before. Sometimes they worked perfectly. A few times they did not quite work. But she kept going, trusting the process, trusting herself. In the final section, they brought together all the elements they had explored: classical structure, jazz harmonies, folk melodies, modern rhythms. The music built and built, the two violins dancing around each other in ever more complex patterns. Then, in a moment of perfect synchronicity, they came together for the final phrase, playing in complete unity. The last note rang out in the beautiful hall. Silence. Then, like a wave breaking, the applause came. The audience stood up, clapping and cheering. Sarah and Rachel Kim bowed together. The applause continued, growing louder. They bowed again and again. People were whistling and shouting, "Bravo!" Sarah felt tears running down her face, but she was smiling. She had done it. She had performed at Symphony Hall. She had played with one of her heroes, and it had been beautiful. Backstage, after the concert, Sarah was surrounded by people congratulating her. Her mother hugged her and would not let go. Emily was jumping up and down with excitement. Professor Chen and Dr. Park both had tears in their eyes. "That was one of the most extraordinary performances I've ever witnessed," Professor Chen said. "Sarah, you've grown so much. I'm so proud of you." Dr. Wright, the dean, came backstage to meet Rachel Kim and congratulate Sarah. "Miss Martinez, you're a credit to our school. What you did tonight showed the highest level of musicianship and artistry." Rachel Kim pulled Sarah aside. "Thank you for being such a wonderful partner. You know, I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe we could do more performances together in the future." "Really? You'd want to perform with me again?" "Absolutely. You're the real deal, Sarah. Keep developing your voice. The music world needs what you have to offer." Later that night, after all the excitement had died down, Sarah sat in her dorm room with Emily. They were both exhausted but too wired to sleep. "I can't believe that actually happened," Sarah said. 6 months ago, I was struggling in second orchestra. Tonight I performed at Symphony Hall with Rachel Kim. "You deserve it," Emily said. "You've worked so hard, and you've never lost sight of what makes your playing special." Sarah thought about her journey. From a scared girl at her audition to a confident performer. From feeling like an outsider to finding her place. From questioning her worth to knowing her value. "You know what?" Sarah said. "When I first came here, I thought I needed to become like everyone else. I thought I needed to hide where I came from and just learn to play the right way. But that would have been wrong. What changed? I realized that my way is a right way. Not the only right way, but a valid path. My grandmother gave me a gift when she taught me to play from the heart, to improvise, to blend different styles. That gift is just as valuable as formal training, maybe more valuable in some ways." Emily smiled. "That's what makes you special. You honor tradition while also creating something new." Sarah picked up her violin and played a few notes from the folk song her grandmother had taught her, the song that had started everything. "This is who I am," she said. A girl from a small town in New Mexico who learned music from her grandmother in a garden full of chili peppers and roses. A girl who loves Bach and mariachi and jazz and pop music. A girl who doesn't fit in any single category, and that's okay. "That's more than okay," Emily said. "That's perfect." The semester ended a week later. Sarah went home for winter break. But this time felt different from last year. She was not just a student anymore. She was a teacher, a performer, an artist finding her voice. On Christmas Eve, Sarah went to her grandmother's garden with her violin. It was cold but clear and beautiful. Stars filled the sky the way they never did in Boston. She played for her grandmother, playing all the songs Abuela Rosa had loved, plus some new pieces Sarah had learned. "I'm doing it, Abuela," Sarah said out loud. "I'm sharing the music you gave me with the world. And people are listening. They're really listening." The garden was quiet, but Sarah felt her grandmother's presence strongly. In the cool wind, in the smell of earth and plants, in the music that flowed from her violin. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for showing me that music is more than just notes on a page. It's life. It's feeling. It's connection. As she played, Sarah thought about the future. She still had 2.5 years of school left. After that, who knew? Maybe she would join an orchestra. Maybe she would teach. Maybe she would perform solo concerts. Maybe she would do all of those things. But whatever path she chose, she knew one thing for certain. She would always play with her own voice. She would always honor her grandmother's teaching. She would always strive to connect with people through music, to make them feel something real and true. The stars shone brightly above her. The violin sang in her hands, and Sarah Martinez knew deep in her heart that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not at the end of her journey, but at the beginning of something beautiful and lasting.